Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Bear Trap podcast. This is actually a special feature with the creator of GEXBOT. I did a prior video in which I actually took a deep dive watching this tool live and talking about why it makes sense to be using it and all of that background. But today I thought it made a lot of sense to just bring Jass on, ask him about how and why he made this thing, and maybe go through a day of looking at it just so that we can get it through his eyes. So yeah, welcome on the podcast, Jass. Thanks for hanging
thanks
out.
for having me. Yeah, it's always great to talk about Gex with you, and I'm happy to share this tool with you guys.
Yeah. So honestly, my first question is, why and how the hell did you make this thing?
That's a good question. I actually got started looking at spot gamma levels. So they do a newsletter and they put out these gamma levels pre-market, and I would mark them on my chart. And so I primarily trade futures, ES, and there's a strong correlation, well, direct correlation between ES and SPX options. So their levels were great for looking for those local reversions, right? And then for a time, I kind of wondered what it would look like, because those levels are based off of open interest. And then, if you go a few hours, even after initial balance, a lot of that data has become old technically. So I wanted to see what the gamma looked like intraday. And that's kind of how GEXBOT started. I would basically just plot a snapshot of the gamma structure. And then the way I would have it real-time refresh was I would save the image in the same spot over and over and over, and then I would just use that as my reference while trading. And then it kind of grew from there. I started sharing on my Discord or on Notecord, and then someone suggested I post it on Twitter, so I started doing that. And then, yeah, it kind of turned into a whole thing. We have a website now where it's actually real time.
Yeah, that's the website that I'm on for everybody, and then we're gonna look at the Twitter as well, and then compare it to SPX over the course of this video, so that we can kind of look at all the different aspects of the tool.
And it's been a trip seeing it like real time versus the static images before. Even with like saving the images as quickly as I could, there's just something very different about watching it change real time on the website that it's hard to explain. There's an intuitive sense to gamma that, I mean, I haven't been trading it for very long, but I know other people have been trading for years, and they say there's a feeling to it that you get that's hard to articulate, but it comes naturally just due to the way that it works and the way that it interacts with like spot price.
Well, it's flow, right? It's the same thing that, right? Because you were telling me that you trade a lot using Footprint, and so you see these like massive orders hitting the tape, or those of you that have watched Bookmap, you see liquidity moving live. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's like you can feel like the heartbeat out through the tape, through Footprint, and you can see that the battle between buyers and sellers going on, and it's very similar to how watching spot price approach some large gamma node, it'll react to it, and the gamma node itself will also react in kind. It's a very close relationship.
Yeah, and it's honestly amazing how well this works, and I can say this in this video because I was watching. There'll be an example later in the video. I was watching this yesterday, and there was a really, really clear instance. Although we're not doing it live because we're recording on Easter actually. But I'll do in the first video, if you guys want to refer to that. Not only does it cover the why all this stuff works, but also I'm going to be using or I use the live version of GEXBOT. But what I wanted to say more broadly is that, like you were saying, because we're just this is just open interest and volume, you would think that because the volume nodes are just a mix of to open, to close, to buy, to sell, we don't really know, that it wouldn't be as informative as it is. But the fact is that because, or at least this is my way of reading it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You've been watching it longer than I have, but because underlying price is moving in tandem with that volume coming into those strikes, over time you actually develop a pretty intuitive sense of are there more contracts being added here, or are the contracts being taken away?
Yeah, it's actually very similar to in order flow when you see so the classic term is absorption. So there, you'll reach some level and you get a sense of a whole bunch of orders hitting the offer at a very specific level, and you can see how it's someone large that's taking it in. They're offering liquidity and they're eating it all up from all of the smaller orders. And technically each of these, for every buy there's a sell, and for every sell there's a buy. So it's not necessarily that you're classifying the difference between whether it is or buy or sell, but rather there's this level at which there's so much activity going on, it becomes a pivot, and it's a pivot that price will react to. So in classic terms of resistance, right? So buyers trying to buy into resistance, either they break through and you get a breakout, you get the retest and continuation, or you get buyer exhaustion, it fails, and the pivot becomes the top. And it's very similar to how spot price will move into these gamma nodes where, okay, maybe people are buying calls, maybe it's paper buying calls, maybe it's dealer selling calls, but it doesn't really matter, although that sounds kind of hand wavy. It's just the fact that this is such a large hive of activity that we either break through and we retest and we don't fall below it, or we fail and it becomes the top for the day or for whatever time frame.
No, I think that that's a great way to put it, because at the end of the day, right, like this is a tool that's made for the practice of trading intraday. So understanding how to use it, right, having a shorthand for reading it is likely more relevant than knowing all of the background. Although, to be honest, the background is my favorite part.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to add, and I think you were kind of mentioning this, right? Like these levels are, how would I put it? They're mushy in a way, right? Because
viscous.
Viscous. That's a good way to put it too, right? Because if you think about it in terms of hedging obligations, and this goes a little bit into the why, right? But it's not a binary level, right? It's not as if under a level all of a sudden nothing's happening, and then above that level everything's happening. It's more like as we move into and away from it, there is a gradual transition in hedging obligations and activity at that level. And so in the same way as perhaps a volume profile or something like that, I see what you're saying about viscosity. As we're heading into a very high volume area, it becomes more difficult for price to move. Whereas if we're moving through a lower volume area, price can just kind of snap through all that, what would you say, lack of liquidity, or those air pockets, so to speak, right?
Yeah, no one wants to transact there, and that's why it's a long area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, I'm actually going to move forward a little bit. And again, for this video, we're kind of assuming that everybody has a pretty decent understanding of all of the colors and stuff in this tool. Of course, it is kind of nice. You can hop over here, change the colors yourself. I'm just using the defaults. So, if you're watching this at home, you want to know what we're talking about, maybe set everything to the default just so that you could have a pretty simple reference. But yeah. One thing I did want to ask you about, and I'll have clarified this in the other video, but just to remind everybody, these dots, what are they? How do you use them?
Right. So GEXBOT it's done in price ladder form, right? So we're just looking at our prices for our vertical axis, and then our x-axis is the GEX, or the exposure, and so it's great for the actively trading, getting the sense of where we are in relation to our levels. But the trade-off is that there's no axis for time. So at every moment, you're really seeing just the current state of the GEX structure. And so in order to make up for this, we have the dots, which are just a way of showing the prior state. So for the default colors are the white dots, I believe, for the 1 minute. That's where the GEX for that level was. And then for the 5, 10, 15, 30, those are all the previous states at those dots. And in a sense, that's how you get the feeling of progression, or in the case of like a classic put squeeze or short squeeze at the end of day, where you see all the gamma evaporating from all the put gamma below spot. You'll see the change or the difference between the dots and the current state.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it also kind of points to the fact that, right, the tool is built, I think, like in a way that it looks really simple. At the same time, though, watching it during all these different types of days, whether you have a chop day or a trend day or you need that screen time, right? Because, and this is just something that I've noticed myself from using it, right? We're going to look at one day, which was a trend day, which was yesterday, Thursday, April 6th. And, the GEXBot behaved in a very specific way. And so you kind of have to build up your sense. It's like with using any tool, right? Any tool that you're familiar with. It takes a little bit of craftsmanship, a little bit of familiarity.
Yeah, a little bit of discretion. It definitely, there's, I love using the term viscous, and then there's like the other analogy I like of, it's sort of like driving a car, where gamma is the rate of applying brakes or gas, but there's a lot of physical analogies that correspond to how the tool works and looks. That it does come with screen time, and it's hard to necessarily verbalize. I don't know if this really is a good.
Well, a little bit. I mean, no, it is relevant for today, right? Because, and again, this is just mostly in reference to the first video, but just as a reminder, right? Because gamma is a derivative, right? It's about acceleration. If we see a big gamma level break, whether to the upside or the downside, we expect to see a moment of acceleration on the other side of it. In the same way as we're just talking about air pockets or places where people don't want to transact and how price moves really quickly through them, the same can be said for this type of a distribution. Yeah, in any case, let's move on to Friday, and then maybe I can sort of like rack your brain as to how you would read all these different cases. I'm just going to start with this image, and this is just GEXBOT off the open. This is posted at 9:31 in the morning, and this is basically purely, well, actually, I'll leave it to you. What are you looking at here? How would you analyze it? What's the first thing that you think when you see this?
Well, the first thing I'm thinking is that the most obvious strike, or I like to call them North Stars, is 4,100 above us. And I'm also looking at the call GEX at 40.75 to see if we auction down towards that, if we can hold above that. And then mostly I'm watching the major gammas and seeing where they're pointing out large strikes of interest, because those typically form places where people are expecting us to go, whether that's informed traders or just the market as a whole. Those typically form targets for me in terms of if I'm looking for a trend day or if I'm looking for a balanced day. These are my lines in the sand, so to speak.
Okay, so are you, when you say the major levels, you're talking about major negative gamma at 40.40 and major positive gamma at 41.19, probably 41.20.
Yes, exactly.
And then those are kind of like defining the intraday range for you. Was that fair to say?
Yeah. So as you're saying before, there's like a look for balance days. There's a look for trend days. Balance days. It sounds really simple, but typically we just auction between our major gamma levels. So these are, the points at which people are expecting a reversion, or people are not expecting us to go beyond, or I'm not expecting us to go beyond. So I'll be looking for reversions at those levels, with zero gamma typically forming the pivot in between. Very similar to how a VPOC or volume point of control will develop, and there will be some value area high, value area low, and we're looking for auction between or within this range, right?
Yeah.
Now for the other kind of day, for trend days, typically GEXBOT will just have that look to it where it's just skewed, and on those days, major gamma in the direction that we're trending is my North Star. That's where I'm looking for us to go. And I'm looking for us to maintain spot above or below or on that side of zero gamma. So zero gamma is kind of forming the line in the sand behind us for trend to continue.
Yeah, and I'd love to get you on at some point also, and we can distinguish, maybe make a video trying to distinguish between these different types of days, right? Because today we're looking at a day that was arguably a range day with a little bit of trend spiciness added to it, but quite choppy action. Yeah, there was one other thing I actually wanted to mention, which is at least for me when I was looking at this yesterday, because I was also trading yesterday, my immediate reaction when I saw that spot price was at 40.81 and that all these people were in these calls from the day before, from Wednesday, was, oh man, the market's going to open and they're going to be offsides on their calls. In other words, they probably bought them at a better price and now they're going to be losing money. So there's going to be this sort of instant desire to liquidate some of these guys, which to my mind meant it's very likely that price is actually going to move a little lower before it starts to move higher. Does that make sense to you? Do you look at that as well, or is that more of a niche thing?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's absolutely fair to say. Looking at ES2, there was that drive to auction lower. We could see the shorts kind of piling into, I believe it was like 4,100-ish. Yeah, 4,100, 4,090.
You're talking ES levels now.
On ES, yeah. Looking for that break.
Gotcha.
Sorry, 4,098. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me move on to the next image later in the day, which is, so we were April 6th, 9:31, and move on to the next one. These are every 15 minutes, right? Because this will be, okay, yeah, this is 9:46 a.m. on that day. Oh, okay, and I can see that some volume has come in, but not a ton. And maybe it just makes sense to be highlighting the 40-50 here a little bit, seeing a little volume come in there. Not super surprising, because I will say by 9:46, just looking at the price action, again, open there, liquidation of the calls, come right down. By 9:46, we're all the way down here. So you correspondingly see that, sorry, let me get back on the Twitter, that they added volume to these 40-50s. Let me move forward a little bit so that we can see what happened next. This is going to be 10:15 a.m. Okay, what are you thinking here?
At this point, I'm thinking that it's gonna be a balance day. Just from, so like looking at price action, us coming down, we're kind of hitting this reversion at, I think it was 40.98. We auction up, and then the way that GEXBOT looks is typical of a balance day currently. We're hovering around zero gamma. It's fairly even on either side in terms of how far the GEX is. There's 40-50 puts that are looking to maybe monetize, or maybe they're selling them, and then the 4100 calls is the other end of the range. So I'm expecting us to essentially range, obviously that's a pretty large range to bounce between, but that's how I'm reading it currently.
Do you make anything of the fact that the 4100s seem to be more dominant at this stage than the put side?
Yeah, actually, so with our max change GEX by strike, is a mouthful, on the bottom right, that also tells me that, so to explain what it is, It's just saying that for each of those time frames, this is the strike that underwent the greatest change in GEX, and then it tells you the notional amount. When it looks like this, that's actually a bias towards us leaning towards 4100. So if the very simple way of looking at it is that, if every time frame is looking at a very particular strike and they're all increasing, then it's pretty likely that this is where most of the interest lies. And this is where the option market wants to go.
And then another thing that I'd add in terms of the why for that, right? You could say, well, okay, Jass, why are they not just selling a ton of those 4100s? And my answer to that would be, it's actually pretty simple. It's that if you were selling options, you'd actually want to spread out a little bit more than that, right? That would be an insane amount of concentrated risk. Whereas if you're buying options and you want the point of maximum convexity because you're expecting a specific move, you actually want to pile in exactly where everybody else is. That's a little bit more of a, how would I put it, more of a technical why type of point.
Well, I think it's also that, this is at 10 in the morning, right? Like, this is so early that it also doesn't make sense to be shorting like that out of the money. Usually you want the day to kind of develop more before you start shorting, unless you're shorting way further out wings, right? But
Yeah,
4100 at this time would be kind of ill-advised.
that's a much better way to put it, because also what I was saying, actually it flips into the end of the day, right? At that point, if you're selling implied vol, you actually do want to be selling the strikes that everybody else is in because of the pinning potential. But exactly at this early in the day, it's a little weird to if those are predominantly sells. Okay, so I'm gonna just hop over the price chart here so we can see where we were trading. Again, this is the timestamp down here, 1014. We look at 1014 here on TradingView. We were looking at right here. So we could see that there was off that low there at 4070, made a pretty big move here. 1014 is here. So then the question would be, as we start to come down here, right, into the next timestamp, which I'm guessing is going to be 1030, which is going to be right here, are they getting out of those 4100s, or do they continue to add to them, right? At least that's what I was looking for, because I actually traded this yesterday. Let's see here. Okay, cool. So this is 1030, perfect. You can actually, this is a moment where we can use the dots, where we can see, well, did volume increase? What did it do versus prior volume? And it's the same, right? Like all the dots are all here still.
Yeah, my bias is still, at this point, it's still balanced, right? Because we're kind of, we came back down, right? We failed the sell-off below. Now we auctioned higher. We failed the break on ES. We failed the break 4111. So now I'm thinking, well, we're probably just going to do a range day, right? Range around 0 gamma, essentially.
Yeah, around this 0 is, it's okay, right under 4080 over here. I gotcha. All right, let's move on to the next one at 1045. And I'll skip through faster later on, but yeah, in any case, this is, 1045. Okay, anything different here? That's a trick question. It's a trick question. I see something.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you see?
The 4090s.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because
cash. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, right, because look at the dots on the 4090s. Even though the 4100 stayed exactly the same, which is actually revealing in of itself, the 4100 started to add.
Wow, even though we auctioned lower there, that's like wow, that's a very good cash.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's like, yeah, so because we're looking for that point where, okay, are we going to make a higher low, or are we going to continue downtrend? but clearly someone or large number of people are piling into 4090 calls. Because typically, you know, when you see spot price moving down, there's still there's the moneyness relationship with like gamma, right? So like if you're moving away from a strike, the gamma will naturally decrease because it's only highest for at the money contracts. But in this case, if you have enough people piling into those calls, even as spot price is auctioning lower, clearly there's a very large drive towards those deltas. Wow.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, and it's something that, you know, I just want to emphasize. It's that, and I'll pull this up because I pulled this up before, or actually, no, this will be. I'll leave everybody to go to the previous video in order to see this, but it's really important to say that gamma is the highest for at the money options. So I'm just reiterating what you said, but if spot price moves down, then naturally all the gamma exposure of the lower strikes is going to be accentuated, even if the volume on those or the open interest on those stays exactly the same. So the fact that here the spot price came down, thereby accentuating the overall the extent of the bars on the put side, and yet the 4090s still gained, means that there was some serious volume hitting the 4090s. Not to mention that the 4100s, aside from this 1 10-minute prior dot, stayed relatively consistent over that time period.
Yeah, I think that's something we should add to our GEXBot. I need to think about how to add that, but that's actually a really good point there. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, always you have to be paying attention.
Yeah.
It's not a tool for the lazy.
No, it's not.
All right, cool. So we see this, we get a little skeptical. We're like, oh, okay, you know, and what was this? 1045. I'm just gonna hop back over to price again. All right, 1045 was right here. And then,
low.
Yeah, it was a very significant low, and then 11 a.m. And this is the last one I'll get into before we actually get into the actual sort of more trending stuff. But this is at 11 a.m. And I think this was probably the most revealing of the entire day, to be honest, because price was still at 40.76, and you can see not only were the 4090s still around where we saw them last time, but the 4100s, despite the fact that spot is so far away, it has been away for a while. Look at where they are. They're right back.
Yeah, just blowing up in interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's why I wanted to do today as the video for today, because I just thought, like,
yeah, it's a pretty good example.
yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna actually take this chart and put it, get it just to be half the screen over here, and then we'll have this guy be the other half, so that now we can start to see everything together. Beautiful. Okay, so this is where we're looking at, and let's switch over here to a 5-minute, so we have that. Great. Sorry guys. Okay, here we go. Expand this axis a little bit. Beautiful. Okay, so now we're looking at 11, which was right here, right before we got this big pump. And
hold on one sec.
Yeah.
Are you trying to show the website chart?
Oh, I see. It switched all. I got you.
I can only see the static.
Okay. Well, yeah. I guess I'll cut that out then. In any case, okay. Let's keep going then. Okay. So looking at the price chart now, we're looking at 11 a.m. and so you see this pump starting to happen. A stupid question, but where do you think it's going to go?
Well, it's the simplest answer every time, right? Like now I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm just looking to go to major gamma, which is 4100. That's where everyone wants to go. That's probably where we're going to head up, as simple as that sounds.
All right, so buy the hell out of it, close your eyes, and then just
Yeah, basically. Just walk away.
Okay, cool. All right, now let's, you guys know what the next couple hours are. It's just, rally. So then let's look at the progression on GEXBOT as that happens. So we had this, and then fast forward 15 minutes later.
Yeah, jeez.
And Spot hasn't even moved that much. We're only at 40.83 here.
11:14. My God.
So you had time to get in if you wanted to play the move up to 4,100.
Yeah, it was definitely this was probably your, even though not technically your last chance, but the easiest chance to enter for a breakout. Just because I know that trend up towards 4,100 was still a pretty hard trend to enter, at least for trading ES. At least it was a really grindy trend, despite like that clear interest towards that level.
Yeah, and from an options trader perspective, well, actually, that's a longer video, but yeah, if you want to trade this with 0 DTE options or something like that, essentially you take some naked, you do ghetto spreads, right? You enter into some naked calls to ride the initial move, then you sell some calls against it once you think that, we'll be petering out. But if you think the trend's going to continue and we're going to go to 4,100, in fact, you probably sell the 4,100s, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, also notable that max change, every single one except for the 10-minute is the 4,100 strike. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, well, it's also the 10-minute is the 40-50 puts dying, right? Their GEX is increasing. That's really the put value evaporating.
That's a really good point, and that's what's adding fuel to the fire to get us to actually squeeze. Yeah.
Squeeze.
All right, fast forward. Okay, we can skip that. Very intense, very intense. Tell me if you want me to stop. I don't know. Just okay. Let's stop right here. This seems nice. What time was this? 12:44. No. Let's do more. Let's look at the 130.
Yeah.
Is this 130? No. Next one. Here we go. 130. Okay. So we all know, or most of us know anyway, 130, important sort of pivot time for the market, same as like 12:30 for whatever reason. Not really what we're discussing here, but okay, what are you thinking now, Jess, now that you're seeing this?
Well, so one side effect of like when we do hit major gamma is usually if there's such a clear interest very early on before we're even closer, right? You're thinking, or I'm thinking that there's so many call buyers most likely who are looking for the pump towards that level. If they're doing it early on, usually that means that when we do get there, people are going to start taking profits. And if there was so much interest early on when spot was nowhere near it, then it becomes very, very difficult as we approach it to then exceed it, because then you get this sort of mucky effect of, it's like a magnet, right? Where we try to get over it, then people, their out of money calls finally hit in the money, so they liquidate those, and then we get, pull back down, and then we sort of bounce between the two. But at the same time, due to that trend up, it's highly unlikely, at least in the underlying, right? If you were trying to short on the way up, there's probably shorts who are trapped, and so they're trying to cover every time price comes back down, and so you just get this bounding effect around these major gamma levels. Yeah,
you kind of, I was also about to say, right, we're just in the muck now, right? If you think about it according to our prior analogies of the volume profile, there's just so much transacted here. Each one of these different strikes, and I'm pointing at the screen now, even though nobody can see me, each one of them has its own sort of magnetic effect, right? It's like it pushes us up from if it's underneath spot, pushes us down if it's above spot as it's decaying. And so this whole thing, it's like a giant magnetic field where all the interactions are a little messed up and mucky. Anyway, that's
Pinning
how I
effect.
see it. Pinning
Yeah.
effects. Yeah, pinning
Yeah.
effects. All right, so at this point in the day, the thinking was, all right, might as well go make another coffee, go do something else, read a book, be done for the day.
Something like that.
What's the point anymore? Yeah, let's, moving forward, same. You know what, I'm just going to skip to the end of the day here. Technically there was a small move here, like towards over here. This was the 3 p.m. move.
Yeah, it's like 34, 35 on ES. There was a
Yeah.
little bit of a pop-up, and then I believe someone was offering there.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to, right, the 4105 ended up being the real center of our distribution, so to speak, and they tried to pop it up to 4107. This is SPX, obviously, and that did not, in accordance with our theory of muck, that was not well received. Yeah, because we were mostly around this 4100 node. This was the most powerful one, and then 4105 was sort of the next one. So if you think about it as like, if you were to split the muck in half, right, literally halfway through the muck is 4107. So, back of the envelope trader math right there, but
yeah, of course.
All right, last slide, end of day. What are you thinking here?
Well, I'm thinking that there's no more breakout, or there's very unlikely. This is at the point where, if you were long and you didn't take profit, I mean, obviously if you were in options, hopefully you already did. If you were on the E-mini, it's probably time to just close it and not bother, looking for more. And it's unlikely that we would, trying to short for like a waterfall break was possibly on the table, because the trend up wasn't like a very, like we said earlier, it wasn't like a normal trend day, right, where you have a clear flows that are pushing price. It was very grindy, and so usually that's indicative of, if we're able to break some prior pivot, then you can get these waterfall effects. But at this point, about 15 minutes before close, it's not quite as likely without some serious activity or serious selling activity going on.
So if you, like, let's say, right, because we're not necessarily interested in looking at the day in retrospective and being like, oh, I would have traded it like this, or I would have done that. Although, to some extent, we have to do that in order to kind of explain the tool. But sort of in light of that, what would you have needed to see in order to have traded for a waterfall break to the downside?
It sounds, I don't know how to put it.
It's fair to say I wouldn't do it, like,
yeah,
there's no way.
Yeah, it would have to, I would have to be watching it happen, and then I would unlikely be, unless somehow I was short of the top or something, and then was doing some trailing stop business, but I don't really like those in the first place anyway. But no, I don't think that sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, that's fine. I mean, to be honest, I agree with you, because it would be one thing if we hit this point in Gamma in GEXBOT and it was still 2 p.m., right? If it's still 2 p.m., hey, all those guys in calls, there's a ton of stuff to get liquidated up top, right? And then if we break underneath the 4100, ooh, they're kind of in trouble because they're on the wrong side of theta. But it's 3:45. There's 15 minutes left in the day, and we're at 4100. So it's a bit of a different situation.
Yeah, yeah. Then the odds are sort of increasing that, as we're stuck here, we're just gonna remain stuck here unless some outside force comes in. But at this point, yeah, it's too late really for some other cascading effects to come into play.
All right, awesome. Yeah, and then, just this is the last little bit of market stuff, but all right, we bounced back up off, surprise, surprise, just underneath 4100, 4097 on SPX. Boom, bounced right up, close at 4105, which was obviously, and this is now, I'm on the website again because the website is showing, the last gamma from, and you can also do all this fun zooming stuff and all this stuff. But in any case, you can see how insane the gamma exposure was for 4105 at the close. And the reason for that is the 4105s are the closest to the money. And so the effect, and with this we get into a different video, which maybe will be made eventually with regards to pinning and pin slippage and all those things, which is kind of fun. But no surprise that we pinned here at 4105 on the dot for the close. Yeah, it's too much, too intense a statement, or fine?
No, yeah, they're like pools of magnetism, right? Like spot price gets sucked to them or it gets repelled away. Those EOD effects are pretty crazy though.
Yeah, I feel like people should just get, if just for the joy of watching that is it's nice.
Yeah.
In any case, that kind of concludes our analysis, or like mini analysis of the day, and we still have like 5 minutes left. So I kind of wanted to ask you, right, for users of the tool, whether they're users of the free part or the paid tool, what type of stuff are you guys looking to keep building? Like, what do you see in the future for the tool? Yeah, what's coming up?
Yeah, so our most short-term feature goal right now is to add a pure 0DT filter. Right now we are including all expiries in our bot, and with gamma, due to how it falls off for later expiries, this is still kind of giving you mostly the same sense as if it was just a pure 0DTE. But I think, and this is something that you've kind of taught me, looking at current day expirations of GEX can often help kind of determine if it's likely we're getting a trend day, right? So if there's like put GEX below us for the current day expiry, then maybe I'll look for that. So that's one feature we want to do. And then beyond that, we're working on we're about done with our CR charts integration, so people can plot our levels directly to their charts. And then after that, I'll be doing our motive wave integration. But in general, we want to have a way for users to directly plot the levels to their platform, whether that's CR charts, motive wave, maybe NinjaTrader, just because that added, one of the biggest bonuses of the tool, at least the live version, is that you're abstracting this data into this easily interpretable way, and every little, even if it's marginal, every little increment towards making it easier to understand it, and whether that's being able to scale it or putting it directly on the chart that you're using to execute, these all make these little differences. So those are usually our goals for our features. And then in the medium term or long term, we do want to add more tickers, the indexes, like the Qs, so people can trade off those. And that's mostly it. At least that's kind of on our current roadmap.
Well, I mean, that's already kind of a lot, to be honest.
It is a lot, yeah. yeah. But it's good. It's good. It's fun to make these for people, I think.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to use them too. And I look forward to, I do want to have Spy on there at some point. I'll be pushing for a couple different things.
I know. We're getting to it.
Yeah. All right. The man's busy. Leave him alone. uh, yeah. No. Thanks for coming on. This is actually a perfect time to wrap up, and I think hopefully this will help a lot of people understand how to use it, how you see it. Obviously, how you see it's not necessarily the only way to use it, but I think it's always nice to have a sense for what the intended purpose was, kind of, and then we can all feel free to misuse it as much as we want, right?
Yeah, abuse it. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. It's been great.